Hello and welcome back to another episode of Talkin Design. I'm Matt,
I'm
and I'm joined
Caity.
today by Caity. We're nailing that intro. And today we have a special guest. Caity, do you want to introduce our special guest for today?
Yeah. So my good friend, also previous classmate from Pratt Institute here in Brooklyn, New York, Alyssa Phillips. She's the owner of Amp Designs. Hey, Alyssa, thanks for joining us. After a brief hiatus, we took the month of July off, so you're our first guest since we took a little vacation. How's it going?
Exciting. Good. How are you?
Well, good. I'm so glad to have you on the show and to talk to you. Mostly because I've known you for a long time, but also you're amazing and you're a rock star designer, and I'm excited for everyone to meet you.
Well, I really appreciate the invite. Looking forward
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. So as mentioned, yeah, Matt and I took a little break doing small adult life things. Matt bought a house.
Oh,
Congratulations.
You got married.
I got married real
A little
quick.
bit of a bigger deal.
Yeah, so we're just minor adult things happening. What's been happening in your world, Alyssa? How's your summer going? How's the business?
It's good.
Yeah.
Nothing quite that big. Although I have some family visiting this weekend, so I'm looking forward to that.
Nice. Yep, summer's kind of wrapping up, but yeah, well, let's get into our discussion. So I just want to give some background to you, Matt, and to our listeners. So Alyssa and I, we met in college. Alyssa, what class were we in together? We were in a few.
Yeah, I think we had a handful. And then we also worked at our first jobs together.
We did. We were both just little baby designers at a small studio in New York. Mostly branding studio, right? Like I feel like I did a lot of presentation design work.
Yeah, we did like a lot of branding and print.
A lot of branding, a lot of print. And that's when I realized I don't like doing print or branding. But you fell in love and succeed at it really, really well. So tell us a bit about your journey and how you got started, and just give us your life story.
Where are you joining us from?
That's a good question.
Sure. Well, I'm in Asheville, North Carolina now. I've been here for about 5 years. I grew up in Buffalo, New York, and then moved to Brooklyn for school, like Caitlin said. But yeah, I guess, okay, so life story. I kind of got into design through music as a teenager, and just like I felt really connected to music, really loved that, really wanted to be involved. You know, like when you're very dramatic as a teenager, like this band gets me.
And were you a bit of an emo teenager, or? Well, I think we all were.
Yeah, probably.
Thanks.
So I really wanted to be like a part of that, but I was not a performer by any means. I was very introverted, a lot more then than I am now. So I started doing like gig posters and album art for local bands. And so when I went to college, my goal was to work as a graphic designer in the music industry. And I did have an internship at Atlantic Records while I was at Pratt.
That's right.
Under Warner Music, which you also worked there, Caitlin, which is another.
Yeah. But I remember one of your projects actually very specifically, like with a lot of like typefaces and like records. Something you did for Atlantic, like a holiday thing. I don't know. Oh, maybe if we find it, we'll pull it up.
I did something with like a handful of different like type lockups that I had done for like different projects.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah, so that was amazing, and I loved it, and I wouldn't trade that experience for the world. But I'm also really glad that I did that, because I realized that I would never feel fulfilled doing design for music for the rest of my life. Like as cool as it was, I just like craved the challenge of branding and like more complex projects. So I kind of pivoted after that, and branding was my focus for the rest of college after that. And I really haven't looked back, although music definitely has a special place in my heart.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
That's awesome.
So
What's your genre of choice?
Yeah.
Sorry?
What's your genre of choice
in
the music world?
I guess like indie, which is such a broad, vague genre, but I like things you can sing to, like upbeat, happy, dancey music.
There you go.
But I definitely like 2000s pop punk.
Yeah.
It yeah, that will never get old for me.
Do you
Very
find, and I'm sidetracking here, we're taking a little detour and then we'll come back. But do you find certain types of music are relevant for different, like, inspiration when you're trying to go heads down on a design, or when you're doing procedural admin work for your business, you're into a different type of music? Like, how does music inspire you in different ways?
That's a good question. Well, if I'm trying to think or write something, it cannot have words.
Same. Oh my gosh, same.
So I just will put on like some chill hop or jazz or something that's like very mellow.
Yeah.
But if I'm doing something that's more production like, and I don't really need to think about it, then I just will put on like an upbeat playlist. So I don't know, that's not really a good answer. But yeah, I don't know. I just like variety. I don't really like, I don't know. Like it sounds silly to say that I don't look to music for design inspiration, but I think it just is too distracting.
Yeah.
That's
That
fair.
makes
That's
sense.
an honest answer.
And it sounds like your tastes are all over the board, which mine are too.
Yeah, a little
I can
bit.
go from like jazz to country to
Yeah.
rock. Yeah. Depends on the day, the mood. I'm also the same way. I can't like hear anything with words while I'm working on an
Yeah.
email.
Which is what it. So
Yeah.
it is what it is.
There's got to be people out there that can do that, and I'm stunned.
Yeah. Yeah.
So after you and I worked at our first studio for a moment, what I don't really know what your life took off after that. I know you and I caught up in the past couple of years, but like what happened after your first New York job?
Um, well, after that job, I had freelanced for another one of our professors for a little while. And I had like a couple like freelance gigs, just kind of like bouncing around. And then I ended up getting a full-time job at a print company and worked there for a couple years and was promoted to art director.
Nice.
And then when we decided to move to Asheville, I was kind of doing a little research on the area, and it was clear that there was a very large design community that was very like involved and very tight knit, but
Yeah.
everybody was self-employed. There are like hardly any design studios and very few like in-house design jobs, but there are a ton of self-employed designers. So I was like, I guess I'll try it.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. So that was the motivation there.
Yeah. I feel like before we moved, I was like, oh, in like 10 or 15 years, I'll start my own thing.
Okay. So, oh wait, Matt, did you ever consider going off on your own freelance or?
I did. I did a few years of that.
Yeah.
I was working on a startup right after school, and we were shutting that down. And I got connected with cousin who ran an insulation business and needed a website. And so I said, "Oh, I can do that for you," and kind of did that, and then ended up getting a handful more clients. So for 2 years, I was freelancing, and then I did not make enough money, so I went back to startup life.
Yeah.
It's very brief, but I've been doing a little bit on the side, kind of my whole career.
Yeah.
So it's fun.
I applaud both of you because I just never had it in me to try or want to do the hustle thing because I imagine it's very hard.
Yeah.
But rewarding.
Yeah. And you worked at Warner Music for a couple of years, right?
Yeah. As a contractor, then finally like full-time design for a brief minute at Atlantic too. But yeah, never. And I do, pick up freelance projects now and then, but the idea of like having my own business dedicated to design, it always sounded nice and like interesting, but like so scary.
Yeah, it was definitely a little daunting at first,
but I think you've definitely figured it out, or I had the pleasure of working with you recently. I'm excited to share the logo designs you did for me. And we'll get into some of the branding. But I want to talk about AMP Designs for a second. So I wonder, Matt, can I share, I'm going to share her website here for a hot second so our viewers can see it. Let me grab it. Here we go. All right. Can you see this? Yeah. So this
Yep.
is Alyssa's awesome website. I guess I'm kind of embarrassing her a little, but it's great. So where did the name Amped Designs come from?
Well, back in high school when I was a wee teenager, I was like, ooh, my initials are AMP, but it's also like a guitar amp.
Yeah, okay.
But then when I started working for myself full time, I thought about just using like Alyssa Phillips graphic design. But I ended up sticking with Amped just because I've been using it for so long and I felt like it really applied to the idea of like amplifying your brand. So
Yeah. Oh no, I think branding also encompasses the name of something as well.
yeah.
I remember sitting in a conference room with you for a week trying to come up with a name for like a flip-flop
Oh,
brand
yeah,
once
I do remember that.
for days. And even just coming up with a name was so hard. And I'm like, this is
Yeah.
not for me.
Naming is really hard. I don't do that for business.
You don't do that too much. Okay. All right. What is your main offering? Like, what do you do for your clients?
Mainly branding and web design, and occasionally other types of graphic design projects. Although these days, mostly I only do those for like returning clients.
Got it.
Yes.
Nice. Okay,
But I
cool.
love having variety.
Yeah. And Matt, feel free to interrupt. I know I'm talking a
All
lot
right,
here.
I will.
We're old friends.
I was going to go back to the daunting piece of starting a design business. What was one of the biggest hurdles getting started, and how did you overcome that? Because I'm sure there's a lot of designers out here looking to start their own business and just don't know where to start.
I mean, like in retrospect, I think there are things that I could have done before I started and while I started that would have made it smoother. But I don't think that I really did anything wrong per se. Um, the biggest thing that I didn't really realize then was that freelancing is owning a business.
Mhm.
And you really have to embrace the whole business side and the admin side. And just because you're one person doesn't mean you're any less legit than like a big design company. And I think if I had gone into it with that mindset, maybe some other things would have clicked sooner. But I still like learned a lot through the process, so it all worked out fine.
Yeah. What's been the most rewarding part of it, of having your own business?
Honestly, like I would say like getting to know clients really well one-on-one. Like when you work for somebody else, often you're kind of just like the designer in the back room.
Yeah.
You get all the info.
Your notebook.
Yeah, so it's really nice to just really get to build these relationships with them, and it makes it really rewarding. I mean, it's always rewarding to see your work in public, but this might sound not to sound selfish, but it really is true. Like when you see it and you know that like you're the only one responsible for that, and that it's really helping somebody that you really got to know. It's really, really nice.
Yeah, because you work with a lot of like small business owners or people just starting their own business, right? Like, yeah.
That's kind of my target.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome too. And like in the Asheville area. So I've never been to Asheville, but I know it's like very a hot topic for like tech scene and up and coming, like art and things like that. So I know you moved from New York down to Asheville. Like what's been, I guess, significant about that move in your life, or how's it kind of shaped who you are as a designer, a business owner today?
Well, I grew up outside of Buffalo, which was more pretty rural, in a pretty rural town. So when we moved here, and my boyfriend's from Portland, Oregon, and he loves like nature and being outside. So when we moved here, it really didn't feel like a shock. It was just like kind of going back to what we were used to.
Yeah.
From New York, that is. But I mean, let's see, trying to think. What was the original question?
Yeah, no, I think, I just find Asheville to be like a very creative hub, and there's a lot of local businesses and breweries.
Yeah. I mean, The thing that we noticed when we moved here right away was how welcoming everybody is and how quick everybody is to just like introduce you to other people and want to collaborate on projects and want to like refer projects to you if it's not a good fit for them. And that
That's nice.
does not, I mean, in my experience, that did not happen in New York City.
No.
I mean, I loved living in New York, but it was just very refreshing to be in such a collaborative community. And I feel like that really, the community aspect was a really good fit for me as a designer.
Yeah. And you're the AIGA VP chapter lead there, right?
Yeah. We had, like I said, when I moved here, there's a pretty big design community. And so 2 years, I think, after I moved here, there was a move to start an AIGA chapter. So I kind of collaborated with another designer who's the current president on like forming that and officially launching the chapter. And yeah, so it's been fun.
Yeah. How many
That's
members do you
cool.
guys have today, or is it pretty active?
That's a good question. I feel like I should know. I mean, yeah, it is pretty active, and we really want our chapter in Asheville at least to encompass kind of the creative community as a whole, not just designers, because there's so much overlap and so many ways that we collaborate with like copywriters or web developers or photographers or whoever. So we really try to open it up, and we have socials that are not just for members, and we really just want it to be like a good community group.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, there's like a ton of artisans there too. I feel like
It is a very artsy place.
yeah, I gotta get down there. Time to go.
Yeah,
We'll do an episode from Asheville, Carolina.
Yeah,
I'd love to. Let's do it.
There's something to be said though about that smaller city or smaller, not necessarily town, but removed from the big cities like New York and Toronto. So my career kind of started in Waterloo, which is an hour and a half, 2 hours outside of Toronto here in Canada, or New York. I mean, there's pockets of community within Toronto, but there's so many people, and it's hard to just be one tight knit group. And in the smaller communities, you can have a lot of people still, but it feels more interconnected. So it seems like that's kind of the same kind of vibe that's happening in Asheville. And it's great to see that you're kind of leading it and bringing it together. So that's awesome.
Oh, well,
community is so key.
I would not take all the credit, but
embracing.
I'm glad to be a part of it.
Oh, definitely. What can I go into your branding process here for a minute? So I came to you because I was like, I'm not selling anything. I'm just myself, but I would like a brand. And you helped me work through that and kind of define that. And I learned a lot about myself along the way, but what is your process? Okay. So first question, what is your process when you're starting a branding project? And then, how we'll get to like how important it is for designers to brand themselves in a minute, because that's a long question. So can you share a little bit about your process?
Sure. So I guess like very, very, very first steps. If someone's interested, I always do like a phone consultation and kind of get to know them and make sure that we're a good fit and that I feel like I can actually help them with whatever they need. And then if we decide to work together, have kind of a discovery meeting, which I think a lot of designers do like some form of this, where we just kind of have a really in-depth conversation. And I really like to learn a lot about like their values and goals and like their story, how they got into their work, and what they want to communicate, how they want to make their customers feel, that kind of stuff. And my work is really built on that foundation of communicating like everything that is really unique about them. And so from there, I designed a couple options.
We did some mood boarding. We did a little bit of mood boarding. That was fun.
I was debating whether or not to mention the mood board. I
thought it was a very important step.
Oh, okay. I'm glad that you thought so too.
Yeah, definitely.
So I do think, yeah, sometimes I feel like some clients are not sure what the point of it is.
Okay.
But I find it really helpful because it helps me confirm that I have interpreted them the way they want to come across before I spend all this time working on design. So
Work smarter, not harder.
yeah,
No.
yeah. So yeah, do that, and then I kind of, well, my internal process is like some sketches and research, and then design, and then I present to the client and talk through the reasoning behind the options, so they can really understand how each design concept really is true to their story and their values and everything that they said they wanted to come across. I show them applications, mock-ups, so they can really envision like how it would live in the world.
Yeah. Do you
Yeah,
do a lot of hand sketching or
yes, but it's not good. It's really
just like
some
rough
people have
ideas?
very precise, like their sketch is basically a logo. Mine is just like some quick ideas.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then you go
It
straight
helps to
to
communicate.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
head straight to Illustrator or what do you
Yeah, then,
Yeah.
yeah, usually I just will then try and like draw whatever I sketched in Illustrator,
Yeah.
and it usually ends up looking quite different from what I originally sketched. And,
Yeah.
I think a
Part
lot
of
of
the process.
designers have that process of like you start in one place and then you just kind of like keep copying it over and over and over, and then you have like 100 iterations.
Yeah.
But yeah, and
What do
then
you find some of the most important questions are when you're starting your process to help? You mentioned the mood board helps you kind of baseline and really get a good understanding of what they're looking for. But I imagine there can be a gap between clients' expectations and what you're understanding from what they're saying. So
mhm.
are there some important questions that you kind of go back to really help narrow that gap?
Yeah, that's a
That makes sense.
good question. Well, when we start our conversation in the discovery kickoff meeting, I start with stuff about their business, not about design. And I honestly, I feel like the business portion is like the bulk of the conversation, and then there's like a few questions about design.
Mhm.
So some of the things that I feel like are most important to me are like, what do you want your customers to think of you, or
Oh,
what, like what do you want them to think after working with you, or what do you want them to think of your products or whatever. And then when I present, I always kind of recap what we talked about to get them back into the mindset of thinking about the customer, because especially with small businesses who have never worked with a designer before or just don't have a background in this, which is completely reasonable.
yeah.
um, they don't always think about that, and they're making judgments on their personal preferences. So it is important to kind of like get them back into the mindset of thinking about what's best for their business and what's going to resonate with their customers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take a step back.
That's some very good advice.
Yeah. Think about how you'll be portrayed by a consumer. Yeah, definitely. What's your favorite part of the process? I guess just the business conversation, really, the learning about the client.
Yeah, that is really fun. Cause I feel like we go in as strangers and when we leave, we're like really good friends.
Yeah.
And honestly, like I would say the presentation, because it's also very nerve-wracking sometimes, especially if I'm like, ooh, I'm not sure if I nailed this one.
Yeah.
But when they love it, it's just a really good feeling. And
Mm,
I feel like then I'm like, oh, now I get to treat myself.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And
How,
I always
oh,
go ahead, Matt.
okay. I was going to just ask, like, you have those moments where it goes really well, and that's got to be really encouraging. Are there those moments where it doesn't go as well, and you're like, how do you handle that? How do you kind of protect yourself from feeling that personally?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, so I've been doing this for 5 years, and I've never had a presentation where somebody did not like any of the concepts. Knock on
Well,
wood.
hey,
that's amazing.
nice. So just be really, really good.
I do think a lot of it comes down to really understanding what they want to say and then that recap of the conversation before the presentation. Because if you can back up why you made all the decisions you made, it's really hard for them to say that it doesn't work. And they might say that they don't love the color or the font or specific elements, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't a good solution. I guess more of the struggle for me historically has been in edits, when I think that when I'm not there to be like guiding them through the reasoning, and they sometimes request things that take it further away from the goals, that's a little bit more challenging. But yeah, I mean, I think it's the same thing. It's kind of like continuing to remind them of the goals and like why certain things do and don't work, and just really helping them understand, because again, like clients are not designers. They don't have a background in this. So when you can really explain it in a way that is approachable to someone who's not a designer, that's the most helpful thing.
I think that opens a really important note for designers in general, whether you're in-house or freelancing. How you ask for feedback and the context you ask feedback in can make a huge difference. If you just send out a design to the whole company and you're like, hey, any thoughts on this? You're going to get some wild thoughts. It's like, oh, why are we doing this? We should be building this product instead. And you're like, no, I just was curious about the color. Or like, you need to give context and the understanding behind the design decisions to really get the effective feedback. So, I mean, that's a great example of how doing so has led to some good success for you. So that's awesome to hear.
Yeah, hopefully it continues that way.
Yes, hopefully it does.
How do you both feel about people posting an A or B concept on LinkedIn? And tell me how you feel about that.
You
want me to go first?
I'll go. I think it's kind of silly, but sometimes I'm like, that's a good question. I guess it depends, but
again, it's context and it's how you ask the question. Asking a usability question or a subjective design question broadly on LinkedIn. Where's your audience? What's the use case? Like there's so many questions that aren't answered by those that make the information you're gaining basically useless. It's all just for eyes and clicks, right?
Yeah, that's true. Well, I will say that the idea of like a user poll or whatever you call it is right for some businesses. And I know it's more common like on the agency level when you're working with like Instagram as your client or something like that. But with small businesses, it's kind of what you just said, I feel like. And I actually have in a spot in my contract where they have to initial this as they may not post any of the concepts, anything that's not finalized on social media, and they cannot crowdsource opinions.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah, nice. And I reiterate after our first presentation, I have a line on the last slide, and I reiterate with them that I strongly recommend they do not ask a lot of people for feedback. And if they are going to ask somebody, then it should be someone who like really knows their business intimately and will give them feedback from the perspective of a target customer. Because if you ask 10 different people, you'll get 10 different opinions that are just based on their personal preference. And that's not really helpful.
Totally. That's a great answer. All right. Stickers on a laptop. No, okay. I'm just kidding. But that's awesome. I guess when you're doing these consultations, I'm just going to say consultations, with a new business, is there something in particular that you look for, that you have a preference to work with small businesses you prefer to work with? I know you do like a lot of packaging and goods and things like that. I guess what is your preference, or what's your favorite type of project to be handed? Yeah,
I mean, there are industries that I like have a little bit more personal interest in. I'm not like super picky, but I also like I stay away from like super icky things like, like an oil company.
Yeah.
But I mean, I generally love things like product-based businesses because I love the packaging and I love doing merchandise and stuff like that. And service-based businesses, I mean, sometimes they need that stuff, but often they really don't.
Yeah.
Which is fine. But I really enjoy like skincare brands, like food and beverage stuff. I also enjoy like the health and wellness stuff, like service-based stuff like yoga, therapists. I mean, that's just like personal interest, but but I really like having variety. I just like learning about like all these different industries.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I was really excited you did my logo. I showed Matt my logo when. Okay, I don't think it was a concept. I think I needed his opinion, so I was asking. I had him look at it too, but it was just kind of a struggle at first until I started working with you, and you made it super easy and helped me figure out a lot of things. But should designers brand themselves, or people like me who don't really design anymore, and I just wanted to brand myself a bit? How important is it that creatives are branding themselves or non-creatives?
This actually came up recently in a discussion that I was having on Instagram, like through my stories. And the question was raised, or the topic was raised about designers who are really, really talented, not getting work and why. And one of my colleagues, Sarah Moon, who owns a marketing company called Sarah Moon, at Sarah Moon Co. But anyway, she suggested that one reason could be that a lot of them don't market themselves properly. And I completely agree with her on that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of designers, especially when they're just starting out, will like put up their website, maybe post some work on Instagram. And we put a lot of thought and intention behind doing branding work for clients. And we know why it's valuable for clients, but we never think about that for ourselves. But we are a business owner as well. And all the reasons that, that branding is valuable to any small business owner is the reason that it's valuable to us too. Like somebody is not necessarily only choosing you because your work is nice. You could have the best work, but be just like a terrible person to work with.
Yeah.
So your branding really does play a part in that. And then going back to the idea of just like sticking up your website, like people don't just magically stumble upon it.
Yeah. Right.
You have to try to market yourself.
Yeah.
So yes, the answer is that creatives absolutely should put just as much intention into their own branding as they would for a client.
And the marketing of it. Yeah. I know you do a lot on social media. You post a lot of, actually everyone should go follow her. Is it at Amp Designs?
Yes, it's AMPD_designs.
Yeah, because you do give a lot of advice. You answer a lot of questions. I've seen a lot of good useful knowledge from your LinkedIn and Instagram. What is something that you get asked a lot of by the creative community?
Let's see. Get asked a lot. I don't know if I've had like any prominent questions that I feel like come up a lot, but I do try to talk a lot about process.
Yeah.
The client-facing process. Because I think a lot of designers, we know how to do the work, but when it comes to like walking a client who's not familiar with design through the project, sometimes that can be challenging to navigate, especially if you've never done it before.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe that's, why there are so many, there are people who do freelance and run their own business and those who don't, because not everybody, I guess, likes to be talking to the client all the time, learning about them. They just want to do the work, which is totally reasonable and cool. And then there's people like you that wears all the hats that can do all of those things, which is hard. I mean, we didn't learn that in school, You don't learn how to really listen and talk to a client and understand or get feedback from them.
Right. Yeah.
feedback from everyone else learning about design around you. So always thought that was an interesting educational system that we have here. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know.
I mean, it gets you like a lot of the way, but
Yeah.
not quite.
Not quite.
I mean,
Yeah, you just gotta learn it on your own in the real world.
yeah. I mean, that's the best way to learn anything, I feel like.
That's true.
On that topic, what's like a big learning that you've experienced that you would pass on to people getting started?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess, well, so I mean, I would go back and say again to like really remember and embrace that freelancing is running a business, and you should treat it that way. And also, I would say for designers like just starting out or graduating, I honestly, if you have the opportunity to do this, it is so valuable to work for somebody else first.
Yeah.
Because like school's great, but you just learn like so much more than you even like thought that you could know. And there's still like a lot that you have to learn on your own going into self-employment after that. But I think it really does give you a good sense of like the best practices for design process and the programs, as well as like how to manage projects and how to manage time and just all this other super valuable stuff that is not really part of just learning how to use Illustrator.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, you get that real world experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess part of that too, I mean, you're immersed in the community. The community is also kind of a great place to learn because you have a bunch of people that have different experiences that you can learn from. Do you have any tips and tricks on like how to get started with networking and engaging with the community? I know a lot of people are like, oh, I need to do some networking. Let me add some people on LinkedIn, but that's not really the goal, right? So what was your experience trying to network and get engaged with the design community?
Yeah, well, when like coming from New York, I had never even considered a networking event before. And it was very bizarre to me. And like I said, I was very introverted. So the first one that I went to, I think was like an AAF meetup. And I just like stood in the corner and stared at everyone for like 30 minutes before even talking to anyone. But I promise for like any other introverts that it really does here that you do it. But I think the most helpful thing to know is like the goal going in is not to just sell your work necessarily. Like it's unreasonable to expect that you're going to meet a bunch of people that want to hire you. So it's really just about like meeting people and getting to know them and building a relationship. And yeah, you probably mention what you do, but it's a lot more valuable to be focusing on like the long term and like get to know like if they have kids or if they're going on vacation, so that like next time you see them, you have that talking point and they are not viewing you as somebody who's just trying to sell to them. They're like, this person actually has a genuine interest in me. And like, that's what makes people remember you like a year later when they do need something or they know someone that needs something.
Yeah.
That was very well said. Yeah. That almost providing value, providing an interest rather than taking. You want to give first, right?
Yeah.
I think if you do get into the conversations of design, it's also really helpful in my experience to ask the questions, like treat other people as the experts. Don't go in and be like, this is how you do this and this and this. Like if someone asks, sure, share an answer, but go in like, people like to answer these questions and like to be asked. So, I mean, go ask questions, get out there, ask questions, but then use some of that learning and answer other people's questions. It's like, that's how you learn.
Yeah.
But I really like how you put it. So I shouldn't have added anything to it.
No, that was great.
You had a great answer.
Oh, I love that point too.
I like it. Yeah, they treat it like a relationship, not a sales transaction.
Mhm. I think that removes a little bit of the like scariness of it.
Yeah. And go to meetups that have free food. That usually helps too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was just looking at Alyssa's Instagram here. I don't know, Matt, are you able to see this? Yeah, can you see my? Yeah,
There we go.
I love it. I mean, you design all of this one. Like, you don't have someone, you didn't hire someone to do all this. You're doing this on top of all the work you're doing and just giving out great advice. And I think everyone should go give her a follow. I think it's so awesome. I'm not signed into Instagram, so I can't show everything. But gosh, even like your fashion shots are like in sync with your brand and color. It's so great.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we'll wrap up here in a minute. But Alyssa, anything else you wanted to talk about or discuss today before we sign off here soon?
No.
Yeah.
I might need some branding work.
Yeah.
Mine here.
You want to see some good branding work?
Katie's
Alyssa did my logo and it's great. I think I've shared it on here before because it's definitely been my avatar a few times. But let me see. Okay, share my tab here. I'll tell you. Okay, here it is. You ready? Da, 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 da. I love it. I'm obsessed with it. And the mock-ups she did with it were so cool.
It looks so good.
I have a fascination with lightning strikes, like on my tattoo, on my arm here. And I won't go into all the details of all the fonts and the color choices, but look how cool this font is. What is this typeface? It's some London-based.
It's called Love Child. It's by this type foundry called Beasts of England. I don't know. I guess that they must be from England.
UK, I think.
But
they're assuming.
Yeah, they must be. But I also really love their website, and the founder or designer posts like stories. I don't know why, but they're really good.
Yeah. Okay, I'll have to check it out. Beast of England. Yeah.
Yeah, and all their typefaces are amazing.
Yeah, that was a beautiful choice. I love it so much. So thank you. Great. Well, Alyssa, it's been awesome having you on the show. Thank you so much for telling us your story, sharing all your invaluable advice for anyone watching who's, getting started or maybe considering freelance or doing branding, wants to get into branding. So just thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge with us today. It's been really exciting to see you grow and like all of your work and how AMP Designs is really, I don't know, you're booking clients left and right. And so congratulations and keep going.
Thank you.
Go give her a follow at AMP Designs.
Yeah. Such a cool name.
It was really fun talking. I really appreciate you inviting me.
For coming anytime. Come on back. All right.
All right, Matt. Thanks, Alyssa. Thanks, everyone, for joining us for another episode of Talkin Design. We'll see you next time.